Hi, everybody. Welcome to another video where I'm going to talk about the nodes, specifically how to interpret them in birth charts and whatnot. And I'm probably going to make a few of these videos to sort of demonstrate how this stuff works in practice. And as I like to do quite often, instead of using a famous person's chart and trying to make my ideas fit or vice versa, their chart fit my ideas, right? I'm just going to use a transit chart for relatively near in the future. This is supposedly for when Jupiter goes retrograde, or when it's, I guess, stationing to go retrograde. Yeah, stationing. So I thought that that would be kind of interesting to just draw a chart for that. So what we find here is actually by chance that the North Node is in the first house. And so what I wanted to avoid is trying to go through each house one by one or whatever, or each axis, uh, because I just don't like doing things linearly like that. Readings and life are not linear. So why approach it like that is my feeling. But it just so happens that, yeah, it's in the first house here. So I'll end up talking about that a bit. But again, this is just a chart for April 10th coming up, right? This person has yet to take birth, but I'm sure, it'll pertain to someone. And I'm going to read the chart, as it is, right? With the focus on the nodes. So like I said in my last video, right? Rahu refers to obsession, and Ketu refers to rejection, most simply put, right? So how can we use that to understand this chart? Okay. Oh, and I also wanted to mention too that I'm using the sidereal zodiac here, but everything I'm saying can be equally utilized with great results in the tropical zodiac and vice versa. I just recently have preferred to experiment more with the sidereal zodiac. I always like to experiment, and I actually find I get really great results with sidereal. Hence, I decided to venture into this territory a bit more. Okay, so what do we want to notice first of all? Well, first of all, we want to notice that the moon is in Taurus, right? In the 29th degree, or 30th degree, if you will. Right? It's literally about to be in Gemini. So, we're just going to pretend that this is the exact time, okay? Because otherwise we would want to do a rectification. But this, for all intents and purposes, this moon is going to get a lot more of its power from Gemini because it's at the very late degree here. But it's basically a 12th house moon either way. And Mercury is in the ninth in the bounds of Saturn. We have some very late degrees here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in late degrees. So these planets are getting into what are called basically the dead state in terms of avashtas in Jyotish. Okay, so the last 6 degrees of a sign are the dead state, and I don't reverse for even signs. So Mercury, Sun, Moon are in the dead state, and Saturn. So that could tell us something. I don't know yet, but that could tell us something. Ascendant Lord is in the ninth house. Okay. Let's see. Like I said, Moon is in the 12th. So we have Moon and Ascendant Lord in cadent positions, but of course, Mercury is made strong by being near the midheavens. So that's kind of interesting to note. And, as you can see, I haven't jumped to the nodes right away because I need to get a basic layout of this chart. I need to kind of get a feel for what's really going on here and so on overall, right, before I just start launching into what the nodes mean. Okay. Interesting that this person has Ketu with Saturn in the 7th house. Ketu with Saturn. Okay. What some classical Hellenistic authors tell us is that basically a malefic with the south node is drained of its ability to wreak havoc, but a malefic with the north node is empowered to sort of wreak havoc. I'm using the words wreak havoc. That's not literally what they say. They just say that basically, it increases the malefic powers of. In reality, any planet conjoined to either node is going to have a lot of strangeness about it and have certain issues about it, and so on and so forth. But for this person, I would say that the themes of Ketu are going to be much more prominent in their life because Ketu's conjunct a planet, whereas Rahu is not. Yeah, and so just from that alone, that's a big deal. Another big deal is that the sun is square the nodes. It's almost exactly square the nodes within a couple degrees there. So that's quite important as well. That that kind of mucks things up too. And actually the sun is headed toward the dragon, right? The nodes are retrograde. So basically the node is going to move toward the sun and the sun toward the north node. So we could say that in a sense, the sun is going to have some more of a north node flavor than south node flavor while it's square the nodes. Okay, so Saturn is basically, telling us about our capacity to have a strong foundation, discipline, structure, and to, really have patience and do the things that we need to do in life, in a noble manner and that sort of a thing. And Saturn here is ruling the 8th and the 9th, and it's in the 7th house. Saturn is actually a Yoga Karaka planet here. And so Saturn is forming a yoga by virtue of being the 9th lord in the 7th house. So this is generally speaking a fairly auspicious thing, and the Lord Jupiter, it is stationary, about to go retrograde, but otherwise it's fairly well placed here in Sagittarius, right? So this is a fairly decent situation happening here. But the question becomes, what does this person reject? Well, this person is going to reject any and all things that they feel are burdensome and limiting and that kind of a thing, And they're probably going to have a lot of problems with relationship. And, that should just kind of be a no-brainer there. They're going to have a lot of issues with relationship. There's going to be a lot of starting and stopping. There's going to be a lot of pointlessness, potentially repression of sexuality with this placement. Feelings of being unworthy would definitely be emphasized, right? Having no patience, kind of wanting everything all to themselves, especially when it comes to partnerships. And so they may date people like this. They might be like this in relationships. They may, it may be a bit of both. The relationships may just engender a lot of this stuff. But we can also see that on some level, they may sort of worship a spouse or a relationship or some kind of grand ultimate sexual desire as a way of giving their life meaning, which is a 9th house thing, right? As a way of sort of participating meaningfully in society. They're going to feel sort of on some level disinclined to do that. They're going to feel unworthy or cast out and so on, and unable to really feel a deep sense of satisfaction with just basic dharma, which is like, just fulfilling basic social obligations and duties and things like that, And as Saturn also rules the 8th house, this is a very auspicious combination for spiritual experiences and consciousness, because the 8th house is a moksha house and Ketu is the moksha karaka par excellence, right? So in that sense, it's very auspicious. This is an auspicious combination for spirituality, is what I mean to say. Though it's in the seventh, and Saturn will be aspecting the first. So these are big themes in the person's life. These are not themes they can easily escape, but they want to escape at least the social aspect of things, like I talked about, right? They're going to flee into some kind of dysfunctional relationship, perhaps. A relationship that starts out very nice, but quickly kind of recedes into chaos, right? Jupiter about to turn retrograde and recede back into Scorpio there, into the sixth house. So, that's kind of that's basically what I would think about this particular combination here, right? If it was just a first seven thing, we might say that this person they might not be interested in relationship, or they might be placing too many expectations in relationship. They might be losing themselves in relationship, and so on. So if I talk about the North Node a bit, then basically the North Node is in the first house, obviously, and North Node are just kind of placed in the first house can easily symbolize a person who can kind of overcome and conquer every obstacle, but has a hard time really knowing and finding themselves, simply and easily. They're probably going to make things more complex than they need to be, and so on. And it's interesting to have the North Node in Gemini as well, because Gemini is very much also a sign that deals with sex and partying and entertainments and things like that, right? Even though we typically think of it as scholarship. Virgo is really more of the sign of scholarship par excellence. Gemini is more like the sort of superficial exploration of lots of different types of things. And it does have this sexual theme attached to it in ancient texts. So this is, again, easily a person who is on some level sex obsessed and trying to find themselves through partying and sex and things like that. But since they've got these planets in the seventh house, it's not exactly, there's some conflict going on for them. It's not exactly a straightforward, easy sort of thing. And then the sun aspecting, like I talked about. Well, what is the sun? Aside from being the third lord here and the lord of the lot of fortune, the sun is basically just our willpower, our connection to truth, and our ability to, focus our intentions and affect the world around us. This is a very powerful sun in the 10th house here. And it's in the bounds of Mars. So it's a very ambitious kind of person, a very ambitious flavor to their consciousness and their connection to truth and whatnot. This is a person who wants to accomplish big things. And given the state of Jupiter also aspecting that moon, which is about to move into the next sign, and aspect Jupiter at a very young age, this is a person that may fancy themselves to be, greater than they actually are, or they may have a lot of sort of psychic and occult powers and abilities that make them very attractive to other people. So in a sense, this could be like a cult leader type in that respect, if things went that route. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know too much about it. I mean, basically, when you have the third lord in the 10th, this is a person, again, that works very, very hard to achieve some kind of result. They could have a career in entertainment, right? On some level, they're going to be in the spotlight. But typically, sun node contacts mean the early death of the father, or a strange kind of situation with the father, like an estrangement, or the not quite really ever having that sort of father figure make the impact that they would hopefully make. So the sun, we could take this as like a sun north node kind of contact and say that, like, this is a person who doesn't really know who they are, who's desperately trying to understand who they are, and they're gonna, they're gonna try to find out who they are in a variety of things, entertainments and whatnot, leisure, sex, relationships, that are gonna probably end up letting them down in a big way and sort of really possessing and seizing their mind. We also notice that Saturn is very closely square the sun with no real reception. And so this is a very malefic relationship there. Saturn and the sun are the kind of the bitterest of enemies, right? And Saturn's the eighth lord. So this would really reinforce not only the death of a father figure, but the hatred, like a vitriolic hatred of authority figures and whatnot, and a constant feeling of being burdened, but not really necessarily wanting to deal with those burdens and whatnot. And it's interesting too, because this would really be the type of client you would need to interview a little bit, and or just really like read them face to face without just the chart, right? And use the chart as a reference, because like I said, the south node with Saturn can deplete its ability to be overly malefic, or to be powerfully malefic, just like it would deplete the benefic's power to be powerfully benefic, and so on. So this is a person who doesn't necessarily have a healthy relationship with death. They're going to reject this notion of death either way. But the question becomes, predictively, does this mean that Saturn is not capable of destroying the person's father or totally oppressing them? And I think that maybe on some level, yes, it could mean that, but I still think that no matter what, there's just the issue is still there on some level, even if it's just the shadow of something. It could be the difference between being so overburdened that you can hardly do anything in your life, versus you do a lot of things in your life, but you always feel like deeply unfulfilled, or like you're running from a final confrontation with life, and that kind of a thing. So finally, to return to the idea that many of these planets are in an old state, an old avashta, right? Or sorry, they're in the dead state. If I said old, I meant I was wrong about that. It's the dead state. They're symbolically dead, right? There's something is happening where whoever this person is, they're perhaps realizing their goals to a certain degree, but then they're either becoming deeply dissatisfied with those goals and with their work and so on, and like letting them go, right? Or they're sort of left in the dark, wondering why things are, not really working out. And again, to me, this is definitely a person who is likely to be very very influenced by this conjunction here in all aspects of their life. I mean, this is a majorly powerful sort of nodal chart, and you just don't always see this. You don't see this that often. So if we work from the lagna of the moon, okay, the moon as an ascendant, we do find that these planets are in the 8th house from that moon, right? So again, that really does emphasize this sort of moksha theme in the person's life, which can also be a life of intense suffering and regret, depending on what happens and how they sort of deal with the challenges and whatnot on a deeper level. So I don't know, I hope that was helpful. It's it's kind of all over the place, but you can't really just say the north node in the 1st house means this and the south node in the 7th house means this, right? We can do a general kind of explanation of that, like I did earlier in the video, but that's not true astrology. That's not a true reading. That's really just for the purposes of kind of a very elementary style of learning. And so I'm hoping that people watching these videos are, are beyond that a bit, right? At least a bit. So you can see how you have to synthesize things holistically. And of course, there's much more we could talk about here, but it's not a real reading. right? It's not, this isn't a born person yet even. So I don't want to take it too far. But, we could even talk about like, what does it mean that Mercury and Venus are sextile and trine the nodes and stuff? I don't really pay too great of an attention to that typically, but it could potentially reveal something illuminating and useful in terms of guiding this hypothetical person in a hypothetical consultation. Okay, guys, so that's going to do it for this video. Please hit like and share and subscribe, assuming that you enjoyed this and want to share it around. It would mean a lot to me. Also, check out my website for individualized readings. You can support me on Patreon if you enjoy the work I do. Every bit of support means a whole lot to me. And please check out my blog as well. Again, I'll post all that stuff in the description section below. And otherwise, have fun exploring the nodes. Till next time.